I want to introduce you to a remarkable person who can speak from the perspective of a client and a patient. Lauren graduated from New York University's Tisch School of the Arts and went on to pursue her doctorate at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. Lauren's been published in Brain World, Fresh Yarn, and the Huffington Post. She's been awarded grants from the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, Ragdale, Atlantic Center for the Arts, and the Bread Loaf Conference, among many others. Lauren is no stranger to the Language, Speech, and Hearing Center. She has consulted Dr. Catherine Jackson on the neuroscience of stroke and language rehabilitation and has been a guest in Dr. Jackson's graduate course. But let Lauren tell her story. Please welcome Lauren Marks.
In the summer of 2007, I was an actor, director, and PhD student in New York City, until the night an aneurysm ruptured in my brain. I was diagnosed as having aphasia. 27 years old, I'd largely lost my abilities to speak, read, and write. That was 5 years and 2 brain surgeries ago. Time doesn't permit discussing the intervening period, but I will say that speech and language therapy was a huge part of my rehabilitation. And this department at CSUN played a surprising role. I'm not sure if anyone here knows Dr. Sinclair's daughter, Betsy. Betsy and I went to high school together. We were in the same English class, which was actually taught by Dr. Sinclair's wife, Joan. Though Betsy and I were not in close contact before the rupture, I can't overstate her significance after it, a relevance directly linked to her name. A few days after the stroke, I could say Betsy again. When your lexicon has been pared down to only 40 words, every syllable counts. At my hospital bedside, my parents told me I'd have to return to LA with them for my language recovery. They were desperate. They didn't know where to start. "Betsy," I said to my mother. My utterance perplexed her. Having exhausted my speech, I tried a pencil and paper. I started to draw a map. I sketched a house in the hills to represent my parents' home in Altadena. A town I called Betsy. I traced an intersection at Lake Avenue, a route I also called Betsy. I marked a building at the end of a long line. "Betsy," I pointed at the destination emphatically. "Betsy! Betsy!" The building was meant to symbolize Caltech, where Betsy had gotten her PhD. My reasoning was unsophisticated. I had no idea if Caltech treated language disorders. I didn't understand the nature of my deficit yet. I simply remembered this was a place problems were solved. I must mention here, in the years I'd been friends with Betsy, I hardly knew her father, let alone his work in communication disorders. When I said Betsy, I simply was acknowledging a dilemma and proposing a fix. But something amazing happened. Driven by a misunderstanding, my mother sought Betsy out, and Betsy then included her father and CSUN in the discussion. By sheer luck, my parents arrived at the best possible resources for the crisis they were mired in. Dr. Sinclair's expertise made their experience navigable. On the road to recovery, he put some of the first names on my map. Working in fractured language is challenging for all parties involved. It requires diligence, patience, and creativity a must. But there is a latitude shared between the mistaken and the miraculous. There is such a thing as an inspired omission, and there can be direction even in the misstep.